Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair, James Dickson, better known as Jimmy Dickson. I hope everybody has a good time listening to Jim for the next hour or so. Hey, everybody, Will here with this week's interview chair. This week we have Jimmy Dickson. Hey, Jimmy, how are you?
I'm good, Will.
Good. It's good to see you. I saw you not that long ago, I guess, but doesn't seem that long ago, but it was when we met across the border. I guess that was a while ago now. So.
Yeah, it was. And I saw you at Westminster.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And,
right.
And we're back there again, back at Lyndhurst again. So.
Yeah, I love that site.
It's a beautiful site. Everything's good there. Have you been to any dog shows or many?
Yeah, I was down in Richmond, Virginia this week, this past weekend. A lot of judge changes because of some people had COVID and the weather and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it was quite interesting. I think the show chairman, Polly Smith, had a hard time filling the panel.
Well, yeah, that's what happens, especially when we were just starting up shows. It seemed like we had the same panel over and over again. But,
yeah, it is. You see a lot of the same judges over and over again. It's hard with all the shows. There's so many shows these days.
Oh, for sure. We have the same problem up here. We're in the middle of a snowstorm up here. How's it going down there weather-wise? Okay.
Well, we had snow in Richmond, but it wasn't too bad. We had snow here at home in New Jersey, and we're supposed to get an ice storm tomorrow night, I think.
That's probably what we have here going down there.
Yeah, you're getting more snow though, aren't you?
Yeah, well, we had ice. We had, I drove today and I went through freezing rain and snow. So it was fun.
Okay. Yeah. I know some of the people in Virginia were going to drive to Indiana this weekend. I hope they make it.
Yeah, I was like, stay safe and be careful,
Right.
Usually it's not us. It's the other people on the road that I worry about. So.
Yeah, well, you just don't want to get stuck in one of those jams where the highway closes down and you're stuck for 24 hours or something like that. What would you do?
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, in Virginia, right. What do you do if you're stuck on the road with those dogs, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well. It's not us, Jimmy. So, all right.
It's not me.
Tell me, how did you get involved in our sport, Jim, sport of dogs?
Oh, well, I was in high school and there was a estate in town that had a big show kennel. It was called the Frelinghuysen Estate, and they had a kennel manager that managed the kennels. Mrs. Frelinghuysen had died, and they were kind enough to let the kennel manager stay on the estate, and he ran a small little boarding kennel and showed some dogs, not too many anymore. It was back in the days when they had the licensed handlers.
Okay.
So I got a job. He called up my mother and said he was looking for kennel help, and I rode my bike over there for, almost 4 or 5 years.
What was his name again?
His name was Walter Morris.
Okay.
He was a poodle. They had poodles. He was best in show at Westminster in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was a nice place to start then.
Yes, right. So, learned a lot about, management and care of dogs and how to take care of them and all that stuff in the kennel.
How old were you?
That's how I started. I probably started there. I was like 14, 15 years old, and he got me a pointer. First show dog I had, he got me a pointer from Bob Forsythe. He was good friends with Bob. He called him up, and I rode up to Forsythe's kennel and picked up the pointer puppy and brought it back down. He trained it. He was going to go to the show. They had a big pointer specialty at Somerset Hills, and he was supposed to go down there, and I thought he was going to show the dog for me, and he couldn't make it. Something happened, so he sent me down there, and I showed it under some pointer experts from England, the Parkinsons. It was Mrs. Parkinson, and was winner's bitch, got 5 points.
Oh, geez, that was your first show.
That was my first show. Never got a picture. They asked me if I wanted a picture, and I thought I had to pay for it. I didn't have any money, so I never got a picture.
Oh, wow.
That was it.
It's a good way to start.
Came home, he said, "How'd you do?" I said, "I was winner's bitch." He had to call up Bob Forsythe to find out how many points I got.
That's kind of funny. So did that bite you then? Was that the bug?
Yeah, I mean, he used to tell me all these stories about all the old handlers and stuff like that, and it just was really interesting. You listen to all those tales and stuff like that. You kind of get caught. And
Oh yeah.
he got me. I would help. He got me where I could help Forsyths at local shows and drive to them and help them on the weekend at the shows, running boxers and Dobermans and stuff like that. They had Mark and Bonnie were working there at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty much how I got started with him.
Yeah.
Then when I was up in New York State at Walk-Hill, they had shows in the Armory up there, and Mark and Bonnie had just gone out on their own. And I asked them if they needed any help because Forsyth had retired, and they said no. Mark said, no, I don't need any help, but that guy over there with the poodles brushing dogs, he's looking for help. So I went over there and he introduced me, and it was Michael Pawazarat, and started working for Michael.
Oh, what a great guy. Love Michael.
Yeah. Yep.
So how old were you when you started for Michael then?
I was probably 18 or 19 maybe.
Okay.
I was driving, so yeah.
And
had
so
to be in late 70s.
So you started at the poodle kennel and working in the kennel, and then you end up with Michael at the dog shows. How come you're not showing poodles, Jimmy?
Yeah, I did a lot of poodles in my day, didn't I?
So how long were you with Michael?
2.5 years or so. Then I left there, and I went to a local 2-year community college. While I was there, I was helping Cliff Hallmark.
Oh, excellent.
And I went, actually, it probably took a year, and I would just help people on the weekends, go to the shows when you had time. And I'd help Richard Bauer and Paul Edwards. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, just helping on Peter. I'd help Peter on some weekends, doing all that, it was just working hard. That's all.
That's amazing. Got it. Yeah. Richard and Paul. When I was growing up, Richard was one of my heroes as well. I used to just love watching Richard show English cockers. So.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So you're working with all these different handlers, and then did you pick one? Did you just pick one for who was the last one you worked for? I'm trying to get to that.
The last one I worked for was Cliff Hallmark.
Okay. How was that?
That was interesting. It was quite, if you knew Cliff, he was an interesting character.
I never met him once. I met him once at a dog show in Quebec.
Oh, up in Quebec?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Cliffy was a great guy. Loved his horses. He would go to the horse tracks. He'd go to he'd talk you into going to the horse tracks. He loved the trotters and the pacers, and he'd go down to Monmouth and do the flats. Yep. He was a great dog, man.
Mm-hmm. How long were you with Cliff then?
Oh, 2 years maybe.
That's good.
And decided terriers would be a lot easier than poodles at that time. A lot less work.
I wouldn't say that now, though, would you?
Well, I wouldn't say that now, but it's still a lot less work. There's a lot more into poodles even than there was back in those days.
Yeah. It's a heavy maintenance. It's labor intensive. They both are. So
they both are labor intensive. Yeah, a lot more into terriers too. I mean,
sure.
With the way they trim them and keep them tighter and coats and stuff like that. Yeah, it's changed quite a bit, the dog business.
Yeah, it really has. So after you left Cliffy, what did you go on your own then?
Yeah, I went on my own. There was a kennel in the town I grew up in. Was an old sporting dog kennel. The guy used to he had out guillotine doors and stuff, and he would have it was outside. Actually, it was right outside of Madison where Mrs. Dodge's show was. Okay. So he would have all these doctors and lawyers come out on the train from New York, and they'd set birds out in the field, and they'd take the setters. He had a lot of setters, and they'd take them out there, and they'd take the doctors hunting. And my father, when he was a kid, used to stock birds out in the field for the guy. And
same guy.
He's the guy's name was Connon, Bill Connon, and they always had a bush at the end when they'd go around all the fields, and they'd come back, and the kids always had to stock a bird right underneath this bush there, so they were guaranteed to get a bird if they didn't find anything around the whole thing.
Yeah, well, times have changed. Do they still do that around there?
No. The kennels aren't even there anymore. I had rented the kennels from the guy, and rented them for about 25 years. I was there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And we bought 2 kennels. So we were running 2 kennels for a while. I was showing dogs, raising 2 kids. It was a lot of work.
My God,
You know?
yeah. One kennel's a lot of work.
One kennel's a lot of work, right? Running two of them.
Yeah. So we're getting ahead of ourselves. So you went from Cliffy to the sporting dog kennel, and
No, I was at the sporting dog. Yeah, I went to right. I got the sporting dog kennel. It was really kind of run down, and I knew the guy.
Did you buy it or did you lease? You leased it?
No, I leased it. Right. Yeah. There was a guy in there, and he was letting it run down, and the owner didn't like it so much, so I went in there and he leased it to me, and we spent a lot of money fixing the place up. But we were there about 20, 25 years, and
this is right
ran a really good business. Yeah, after I left Cliff, right? Yeah.
So expound on that for me, because you started showing dogs, and I when I think of Jimmy, I think of border terriers. So I want to get into that. So,
well, my big break was really when Cliff passed. His big client was Kate Seaman, and she called me up after he passed, and she wanted me to show her dogs, and that was a great break for me. You know, she would send me to England and look for dogs to buy, and we'd bring back dogs and import them. She liked to import border terriers. She wanted, Cliffy showed Wires and Westies for her as well. She really wanted to try and stick with the border terriers. So we had, half a dozen, maybe 10. We'd breed maybe 2-3 litters a year for her. We'd go over to England and look for brood bitches. She wanted to buy a bitch or she wanted to buy a dog. I could tell you an interesting story.
That's what I want to hear, Jim.
All right. She sent us over to England. She wanted to buy a bitch. So she sent us over to England, and Alice, my wife, and I went over there, and we get over there, and you go around in England, you look at these different breeders' kennels and talk to them, and you go to the shows. We saw this guy, and he had a bitch. We had bought a dog from him a couple of years before that. And he had a bitch there, and he says, do you want to buy this bitch? And I said, yeah, I really like her. So we worked it out, and we bought the bitch. And I says, well, that's a nice dog you've got there. And he said, well, I don't like him. You want him? I said, yeah, sure, I'll take him. So he says, I'll throw the dog in for what you're paying for the bitch. I said, okay, fine. So we threw the two of them on the airplane, and we're coming back. And Alice says to me, she says, Kate didn't want a dog. She only wanted a bitch. I said, well, she might like the dog. We'll have to see, right? So we get home, and we'd always come home with the dogs. If we bought something over in England, we'd come home and give her a call, and she would say, well, bring them on up. You go up to her place at Norwalk, South Norwalk, out on Wilson's Point. She had a big place. Wow. And we get there, and she looks at the bitch, and she really liked the bitch. And I said, well, we've got this dog. You threw the dog in for nothing. And she says, I don't even want to look at him. So you don't want to look at him? She said, no. I said, all right. So I said to Alice, I said, well, Sam Ewing said to me, if I ever saw a border terrier that had a really, really pretty head, he says, I'd be interested in him. So I said, all right. So I called up Sam, and I said, Sam, would you be interested in this dog? And I showed him to Sam and said, oh, yeah. He says, I really like him. He says, I'll take him. So I said, all right. So Sam took him. And the first show we go to where Sam is showing the border terrier, he beat our special with this dog. So when I came home, back then we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So when I got home, I called Kate Monday morning. And I said, you'll never guess what happened. She says, what? I said, that border terrier you never wanted to look at won the breed. She said, it did. I said, yeah, it did. So make a long story short, she co-owned that dog with Sam. And we did really well with that dog. Sam didn't want to spend any money on the border terriers. So it worked out really well. Wow. She got herself, back to that dog. And yeah, his name was, what the heck was his? It was Tomahawk. Thorolby Tomahawk was his name. No, maybe that was it. Thomas, I guess. Thomas. Right. It was a while ago. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing how things have changed. You're talking about Sam, you're talking about Kate. Is those just doesn't happen anymore, those people, No.
Well, they were true breeders of dogs, those two. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like a bygone era that we all miss, really. I do. Think about it.
And they knew their dogs. I had somebody once at a dog show tell me, they said, well, Kate's just a lot of money, doesn't really know anything about dogs. And they didn't know. She showed those dogs when she was younger. And you'd bring a dog up there for see whether a litter of puppies that we had or a dog we bought over in England, and she'd say, "Oh, that reminds me of so and so," and I'd say, "Okay." She had pictures and paintings of most of the dogs, so she'd take us inside and show us and say, "Well, that one right there," and boy, it was almost a picture image of the dog. I mean, she knew which dog she had and stuff. Yeah.
No, I think they're way more involved back then with the actual dogs, than they are now.
They were, yeah.
Like
I don't think I watched television or any of that kind of stuff those days.
Yeah.
They did their hunting, and they owned Shelburne Farms up in Vermont, so they used to go on the hunts and do all of that when she was first married and stuff. I mean, that's it's like huge place up there.
Yeah,
that was their summer place. Yeah.
It's amazing. I love those stories. When I think back of those, like I didn't know a lot of them, but I knew like Mr. Aldridge and Betty Hislop and those bunch, and they were the same. They knew their dogs inside and out. They weren't just there to send the money over. So
no, and they loved them too. Yep, they were very, very interested in their whole breeding programs and everything else that they did. Right? Wow. Yeah, they were a lot of fun. So fun to work with and great to talk to every week when you'd call them up. Oh, exactly. They wanted to know. They knew everybody. They wanted to know who was doing this, who was doing that. She never was angry about anything if you lost. If you came home and you lost under somebody she thought she was going to win under, she'd be like, "Well, that was very interesting." Never said a bad word about anybody. I never heard her say anything bad about anybody.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because
true sportsman.
Yep, and that just seems like the era. Like I think of Mr. E like that. Mr. E never would let me say a bad word about a dog.
No,
they weren't allowed to. So
no, they weren't. They were great people.
They sure were. You learn.
We miss them. It's a generation that's kind of gone by, isn't it?
Yep, sure. Yeah. So you were on your own then, and you were in that kennel for 25 years.
Yeah, I was in that kennel for 25 years, and in 1990, we bought the place we have right now because the real estate market had gone down. And I thought to myself, well, actually, I had another client, Barbara Irwin, and she wanted me to stay in the area in New Jersey because I was helping her. She had collies and papillons. Tommy Cohn showed for her and Richard showed for her. But she wanted me to stay in the area. So she helped me buy this place that we have here.
Well, that worked well.
Yeah, and that was, I said to her, we're renting this place and I can't guarantee that I'm always going to be here. So at that point, we were looking for a house to buy anyway. We had saved up a little bit of money. And she said, well, I'll help you buy a kennel. I want you to be, within about a half an hour.
Wasn't that nice?
Around. Yeah, we looked around and found a place, and now we got this place. Which I can tell you, there's a history behind all these kennels in New Jersey. This was owned by a lady named Evelyn Short, who owned a dog named Dunelm Galaxy.
Oh, which George, yes.
She owned George.
Yeah, wow.
Before Ruthie Cooper got on the dog.
He was when I was a kid, he was my very favorite English Cocker.
Was he? Wasn't he a beautiful headed dog, wasn't he?
He was my very favorite. When he won the Spaniel Club from the Veterans class under Mrs. Clark, I was like,
yeah.
So who would you consider your mentors then over the years, Jimmy?
Well, of course, Michael and Cliff Hallmark, the people you work for, and Walter Morris.
I want to know the inner details of working for Michael. I should get Michael on this show too.
Yeah, you should get Michael on this show, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. He could tell you some great stories because he worked for Richard. Yeah, right.
He was always fun to have dinner with and hang out with. So
yes, he was. Well, when I went to work for Michael, he was married to Khaki.
Okay.
All right. And they were out there in Myerstown. And he had when I went there, he had just one kennel. He was just showing poodles and stuff like that. Yeah, and it was a nice old stone farmhouse in the middle of Pennsylvania. And we worked.
They all were.
Oh yeah, it does. We worked for so long, hour-wise. It's unbelievable the hours you put in when you're working in poodles and going to those shows and just the traveling back then. Because the shows were mostly just Saturdays and Sundays. Sometimes you had a poodle specialty on a Friday, but I mean, you'd start in the kennel in the morning at 7:30. Some days we wouldn't get out of there till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then you're doing that and you're going to the shows. You had a lot of maintenance. We had about 35, 40 poodles in coat.
And even after the show's over, you're not done. You can't just.
You're not done. No, you got to, yep.
Break them down, wash them out.
Break them down, wash out that spray and stuff like that out of there, right? Now they take the switches out and wash those, I see.
Put them aside. We'll wash those.
Yes, makes it much easier. They behave better.
I remember one that we were campaigning a dog. We were showing him down there, and I forget what show it was, but we were washing him out. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We were washing him out to headlights. And it was Ray and Ginger Scott felt bad for us and brought us out some dinner.
Oh, did they?
Oh yeah, because we were there all bloody night washing out these dogs.
Right. But we used to, in those days, most people had a van. They didn't have these big box trucks and stuff like that. Yeah, I had maybe a half a dozen dogs you were going to the shows with, maybe 8.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good string back in those days. But you'd go in caravans because you didn't have cell phones, and if you broke down, you were out of luck. So we'd go. I mean, Roy Holloway was there, and Bobby Fowler and Peter Green, and we'd all carpool, to the shows. And sometimes we'd go into these vans and put 2 or 3 handlers in there, plus all the help and stuff like that. Help was always sharing rooms because they didn't pass along the expenses. We didn't stay in Hilton's or anything like that. I can tell you that. We stayed in pretty much rundown hotels. Yeah. Well, they weren't the best, Right. Yeah. I can remember we had Scott Kipp and Bobby Poust worked for Peter. I worked for Michael. David Sombach worked for Paul. You know all these guys now, right?
Oh, yeah,
we were all kennel help back then.
Well, when I interviewed Paul, he was telling those stories about the caravans. They were great.
They were great times. I'll tell you. You'd go out to dinner and you'd talk about dogs. You had all those great handlers sitting there at a dinner table, and you're just there absorbing all the information when they talk about these dogs. They talk about, and wasn't like they talk about them today. Today they talk about them because they're afraid they're going to get beat by them.
Right. Yeah.
Back then they talked about them because they admired the dogs. The dogs that they admired. Right.
It really has changed in that aspect because I remember that going to dinner with like Garrett and Gary and whatnot, and that was the same thing. They talk about so and so's dog. I wish I had that dog and this dog, and there was never anything malicious. No,
if they didn't like something about the dog, they'd say, well, I agree with you. That's a great dog, but I'd really change, the ear set or whatever about the dog. Just one little thing maybe, but they didn't trash the entire dog and say, how could you ever like that dog or anything like that?
And I think that really helped us learn when we were listening to them because we weren't made to lean a certain way towards a dog. We would look at it through their eyes as being a good dog. It wasn't their competition because you hear it now you hear them go on and they'll beat up some dog and you'll say, guys, he can't be that bad. He's won 30 best in shows,
How bad can he be? He's got some nice thing about him, right? Yeah, you're right. And then, like you say, as a young kid, you'd go the next day and you'd look at the dogs they were talking about.
Yep.
And you'd see, okay, maybe the ear set could be better on this. If you didn't know, you could ask one of those guys and they'd tell you.
Oh, it's no. I remember when I worked for Stevie would, if we had a break in the schedule, I'd ask him a question. He'd say, well, come with me. And off we'd go. We'd go ask Dick Cooper, or we'd ask. It was amazing,
There were amazing, knowledgeable dog people back then, right? And they knew their breeds. Of course, we didn't have, what did they have? Maybe 130 breeds back then?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot fewer breeds than no good.
Wayne and I were talking about how many breeds there are now. We figured it out. And if you did it 2 minutes per dog, you have 8 hours worth of group judging now.
It's
crazy.
That's why these big shows take so long to accomplish, when they have full groups with all the dogs that are in them. It's very hard. Yeah, very hard. So you think we'll go to 2-day dog shows possibly?
I don't know. That's what it was like when I was a kid. It was great. We used to have the circus, and we had the sportsman show, which was 5 shows in 7 days. Excuse me, but we hardly had 3-day shows when I was a kid. It was 2-day shows.
Just 2-day shows, right?
Yeah. And you look forward to them, and you never I find now, like at a 4-day dog show, the Monday will come around and this is 1 day too long,
or 2 days too long. Well, let me ask you, you think back to some of the big shows, you can remember who won them because there weren't so many shows.
Now,
Today, by Sunday, you can't remember who won the show on Wednesday or Thursday.
and you're too
Only
tired.
the person that won it can remember, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
And I just remember being at the end of the day, being so tired that you never really got in trouble because you were so tired. You went to bed,
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, on those weekends, right.
So you worked there for Michael. What was it like working for Cliffy, being on the road with Cliff?
Well, it was entertaining. He was a great dog, man. I saw him do some stuff that I wouldn't, he did some stuff that was really pretty interesting. I remember he lost one day, and I don't remember what breed it was, maybe Westies or something like that. And he's sitting there, and he was, he would get quite angry. And there was a lady there about ready to go in with her Scotty. So he said to her, he says, "I'm going to show this Scotty for you." And he'd take the Scotty in the ring, and he put it on the table, and he yelled at the judge the whole time. And I was like, wow. And, the judge was intimidated by him. And it was like, he told him all the things that he did wrong in the Westie ring or whatever breed it happened to be. And that was that, right? Walked out of the ring and done and over,
And lady got a free handling fee showing her.
Lady got a free hand. She didn't win, though.
No, I guess not. Well,
I'm not so sure she was happy about that, but.
So did you caravan when you were with Cliff too?
We didn't caravan as much when we were with Cliff.
Yeah.
It wasn't too many people in the area here in New Jersey. We didn't have that nucleus group like they had in Pennsylvania with Paul, and they all lived probably within a half an hour of each other.
Yeah, that's amazing. That really is. Think of it now.
Yeah. Like during the week, I'd go over to Peter's and go over, Scott, Bobby, we'd go out on the town, and do all of that. Just fun.
So for your mentors, you said you had Michael and Cliff. Who else?
Well, that's pretty much about it. Just the terriers and the poodles they're my favorite breeds. I have English cockers.
I didn't know poodles were one of your favorite breeds.
Yeah. Well, I started with the pointer, like I said, with Bob Forsythe. And I got that because I thought I might go hunting if this dog business didn't work out too well. I could always take the dog hunting. My father was a big hunter. But we never did get the dog out hunting that much. I went to too many dog shows. Yeah.
What about dogs that you've seen over the years? I try not to touch on dogs that are being shown now, but what about dogs that you've seen that have left a real impression on you that you've never forgotten?
Well, that Workmore Wagner, that border terrier that Cliff showed for Kate, he was a really, really nice dog, beautiful headed dog, beautiful fronted dog. I didn't see him until he was older. He was like 6 or 7, I think, when I got to the kennel at Cliffy's. He was a really good border terrier. It was one of the breeds that I'm really interested in. But one of the dogs, I don't remember the name of the dog, but it was a husky that Trish Kansler showed and won Westminster.
Yeah. Sinar.
Innisfree something?
Innisfree Sinar.
That's it. Yes, Sinar, right. I thought that was an absolutely gorgeous animal. Yeah, the way it moved and stuff like that.
Yeah. And his ear. I always remember his ear. That little tip was gone on it. Yeah.
Yeah, the tip of his ear was gone. Didn't stop him, and he did it.
No. And that was Mr. E that gave him best in show. That was quite the win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a really good dog. Trying to think, that Galswell Excellence dog was a beautiful wire fox terrier dog. It's a shame that that it ended up where a lot of people couldn't use him. Yeah, that whole thing. That was hard on the breed, really. Didn't help anybody.
That sure was an exciting era, though, wasn't that time when there was the George dog out and Patty was out, and it was
great to watch those. Yeah,
yep. Yeah. I remember being on the Florida circuit, and that was where you had to be, watch fire.
Yes, right. Yep. Mm-hmm. There was some Irish terriers. There was a Woody showed one, and Bob Clyde showed one. They were like the B litter, and there was these 3 great Irish terriers, all out of the same litter, and just to watch them in the ring,
I'm sure.
Yeah,
just really exciting alone going after each other. That'd be fun.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you miss that. Like when I was a kid, I remember being on the cherry blossom circuit. I was young. I was really young because George was showing Marquis and Janie had Yankee Rifleman, and it was just fun watching the two of them battle it out.
Yeah, right. Just to battle it out, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't even remember who won most of them. I think Janie did, but it was just fun to watch the two of them go at it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I missed that.
Yes, I miss it too. You had English cockers. Remember that Sailors Beware?
Yep.
That was beautiful. You know?
Yeah. Yep. I can tell you though, George is my favorite.
Well, George, you see, and George wasn't around. That was before my time. You must be a lot older than I am, Will.
I was a little kid.
You were a little kid.
But it was so much fun. And he was like, I remember seeing a picture of him in the English Cocker newsletter, and it was just a headshot. And I think I cut it out and hung it on my wall,
Well, they have some great pictures, headshots of that dog,
Yeah,
of George, right?
So pretty. Oh my God. I just never after that, it was a dog up here. A Dunelm dog came up here, and I was a big fan of that dog too. It was probably just because of George. He was a nice dog, but he wasn't George.
Wasn't George, right? Yeah.
But, yeah, that's fun. I love going through that stuff. So, what about advice? If someone came to you and said they wanted to be a handler, what advice would you give them?
Well, I got to tell you, the guy I worked for originally, Walter Morris. I mean, he showed for one person, Mrs. Frelinghuysen, basically. He only had to please her, And when I was showing dogs, we did most of the breeding for a lot of the clients. The dogs would come in the kennel, we'd condition them, we did a lot of the work for those people. And I find it really difficult today to meet these people ringside and look at the dogs, some of the condition that they're in, the way they're groomed and everything like that. I just got to keep my mouth shut and show them. So I think the business has really changed quite a bit from, the care and the conditioning and all of the stuff that I learned as a little kid growing up in the kennel ranks and as an apprentice conditioning, at Michael's, we'd be brushing poodles out till 10 o'clock at night, we'd put them in oil because we had so many of them. And I don't know, you just don't seem to, the kids, they don't work in the kennels anymore.
Now, when you were working for Cliff, how did he teach you to start pulling hair? Did he just hear?
He had 60 dogs in the kennel, and you had to keep, you'd pull them. He'd have dogs that were just there, and he'd put a Westie on the table, say, here, trim this one, and see if you can get it in shape. So, you'd work on it, and he'd look at it. It wasn't being shown or anything like that, but you just tried to get it into shape. And I remember thought I had it looking really, really good. He came over and he looked at it and he says, the way you got this dog trimmed, I thought it was out at the elbows, but it's just the way you have it trimmed. I'm like, okay.
Okay. Point taken. So, but was he a good teacher then?
Yeah, he would, and you watched and you learned, and he'd tell you how to pull hair, and, do that.
Like you'd have to have an eye yourself because you have to know, like you can always, there's no real recipe. So you'd have to, I find you have to have an eye yourself. You can take a technique from somebody, but it still has to be your eye.
Yeah.
Like
at Michael's, we learned how to scissor and stuff like that. There was a Swedish guy there. His name was Tommy Ostman.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of Tommy. Yeah.
Okay. And Tommy worked there for about a year, maybe a year and a half while I was there. And he was a great dog man in his own way. And he came over to learn because Michael was a great groomer. And he came over and I'd trim on the dogs and he'd trim on the dogs. And we'd talk about dogs, different dogs and everything like that. While we're trimming out in the kennel, we used to go to, because we didn't have air conditioning in the kennel. So in the summertime, we would work in the morning till about lunchtime. And then there was a quarry down the road that was full of water, and it was, people go swimming down there. So we'd go down the quarry and we'd swim in the afternoon, come back about 3 or 4 o'clock when it cooled off, and we'd work until midnight.
Oh, wow.
Figured we'd put our time in that way, right? But it was too hot to do those poodles in the summer like that in the afternoon.
Sure, yeah. So how many poodles would Michael have in the kennel then?
We probably had about 45 to 60 poodles.
Holy jumpins.
Yeah.
That's frightening.
And Michael believed in keeping them all in coat. He had minis there and toys and standards. And yeah, we had a lot of poodles in that place.
Wow.
especially when PCA came around.
Yeah.
We probably took 25 to 30 dogs to PCA.
I wonder why Michael never went ahead and started judging.
Well, he's doing poodles and English cockers.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen him. So.
Yeah, well, he's judging. He's breeding thoroughbred horses now too. You should interview Michael. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah.
Make a note and give him a call.
Yeah. He said he started judging too late. He keeps telling me I should apply to judge because he said, in today's world, you have to be marketable. You have to have a couple of groups.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get assignments if you do, one group even. Don't you think?
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just started and I did the first half of sporting dogs. I won't get the group until probably the end of the year. But even then, you're still not really marketable. You'll still be going yourself pretty well here on your own dime until you get more groups under your belt.
Right. Yeah. If they're going to bring you in for 2 or 3 days, I mean, if I get the terrier group, you get 80 dogs in the terrier group. Who's going to fly you to Chicago or wherever to do 80 dogs, right? It's probably not profitable enough in this day and age.
So are you give aspirations to judge at all?
I probably will apply soon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go off that angle then. What do you think a judge, like if you were a judge, what advice would you give me?
If I was a judge?
Yeah, but you've been a judge pretty well. Yeah, I know you're not an official judge, but we've all growing up in this sport, we all have that in us. We all judge dogs. So
you mean give you advice if I was going to judge?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would say judge the breeds that you know well. Right. I mean, we've all watched judges that, and I always get this because I'm president of a kennel club out here, and I always get this statements from mostly new people that this judge is no good, or that judge isn't very good, and they really don't know. Right. I mean, I can say, well, this judge isn't very good on maybe the low-legged terriers or on some hounds. They're not so good, and not even all the hounds. Maybe they're not so good on sight hounds, but they're good on the scent hounds. Each judge, I think, has stronger points than others.
And no judge can be good at all the breeds, no matter, even if they are all rounders. It's Bobby always told me it's impossible to know all the breeds at that level. Like a good dog.
At the level we're talking about, right? Yes.
A good dog person is going to know a good dog no matter what, but he might not know the intricacies of certain breeds or
he's going to know the structure of this, right. And he's going to know that the Scotties are lower legged and have a bigger chest and this and that. Not going to put up a narrow bodied Scotty, hopefully, right?
Right. And since we've been around, we have this bank in the back of our head that we've seen these dogs that we've stored back there, so that when dogs walk in our ring, we have that Scotty that's already in our head. And
Rayburn's Close Encounter would be mine.
Exactly. I was just talking about George the other day because George grew up around here where I live. He grew up.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting. What Colin Brownlee, a good friend of mine, his neighbor was George's. He always tells a story. Cousin, maybe. But he had pictures of George everywhere. So.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
They must have been close, right?
Yeah, well, for sure. And because Colin tells this story about going to a sanction match, and this guy, this next door neighbor, saying, "Oh, you went to a dog show, did you?" And Colin's, yeah. Well, he brought out this photo album, and it was just full of George. And Colin didn't.
That must have been a pretty impressive photo album.
Oh, I'm sure. For the longest time, though, when I lived up in Milton, George told me stories about riding his bike by the house that I owned. So,
really?
I didn't back then, but it's an old log house. He says, "Oh, I know the log house. I used to ride my bike by that to go fishing." So, yeah.
Isn't it funny how these old handlers, they had stories about all these different houses and rest stops or exits on a highway.
Oh God, yeah, restaurants.
Restaurants, diners, right? Yes, right. All the places that they stopped, right? Yep. I remember going up to Bill Trainer's wake, and we had John Ashby and Paul and myself and Michael and Roy Holloway. I think the 5 of us, maybe there were only 4 of us, But anyways, we going up there. Roy Holloway, he talked the whole way up and the whole way back. He had a story at every exit. And everybody else, I drove up and drove back, and everybody else is sleeping in the back of the car. We didn't get back till about 2 a.m. or so. And Roy, he talked the whole way till he got home to the driveway.
I bet you it was great stories, though.
Oh, they were great stories. Yeah, I can't remember one of them, but they were all great stories.
I bet you could. I bet you if someone would click your memory and, oh, yeah, you'd bring it back up again.
Yeah, when I go by that exit, right?
It'd be your turn to tell it. Because we all have those stories.
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
So what's next for Jimmy? As you have aspirations for judging, and you're still showing. Are you showing as many dogs, or are you slowing down?
No, I'm not showing as many dogs now. My back is bothering me. I'm probably going to have back surgery. Come after Montgomery. Going to try and make it till I'm 65 so that the insurance, isn't so hard. But yeah, I'm not showing as many dogs because, quite frankly, I have a hard time walking around.
Oh, really?
And doing that,
It's a hard job.
It's a hard job. I'm still using those wooden crates, and everybody tells me I'm crazy for lugging those wooden crates around. No wonder my back is bad. So I'm like, well, okay. I miss the Foley boys.
Oh,
that we used to have.
We didn't have Foley boys up here.
No, you didn't have any Foley boys. Well, Kate Seaman loved those Foley boys. She was like, she would bring, whenever she was going to a dog show, she didn't go to that many at the end. So she would always go to Westbury, Westchester, Oxridge. She always had a party after Oxridge. But anyways, she would bring 2 coolers. She'd bring a cooler of beer for me and fresh tuna sandwiches and lobster sandwiches that she would make. Oh, wow. And she would bring about 6 coffee cakes. Now, she would bring the Foley boys the same thing, but they got a bottle of scotch and a bottle of bourbon and all of that. So she always had a parking space when she pulled into the dog show from the Foley boys.
Sure.
Yep. They would ask me first thing when I got there in the morning, is Kate coming today? And I'd say, oh, yeah.
Wow.
We got her spot for her.
Okay. So what about, I have a question for you too. We all have these little superstitions. Do you have any superstitions when you're showing dogs?
No, I don't have any superstitions.
None? Leads?
No. Nothing. I'm not a very superstitious person.
Touch wood, right? Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I got a negative on that one, Will.
Oh, well, that's the way it goes. It's amazing how many they'll I can't remember which one it was I was talking to. He had the same answer. No superstitions. And then I started pushing and prodding, and he'd say, well, I never did that because when you do this happens, and that. So that's a superstition.
But he didn't have any.
What do you think about the current judging process? You thought?
Well, I think it's good, actually.
Yeah.
I think that, you have to have an education, and anything is good. Even when we have this handlers program and they have an educational thing every year, some programs are a little better than others. But, I just think, you just have to keep learning. If you think you know it all, you're never gonna get ahead.
Oh, sure, but I think that, like I was talking to Richard Sedlak, and he feels he's already put in 50 years of learning, so he has fast about it. So
but you could learn something, right?
Yeah, for sure. I get that.
And I agree with those older judges. I mean, they've been judging and everything else. There's probably they probably ought to give them a little more credit for their experience. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they're crediting the experience as much as they should.
I just worry about the process scaring away some people that could have been amazing judges. They get to the point where they think, oh no, I'm getting too old, and because it's going to cost so much to do this, and we lose some really good people that just don't want.
Michael's a good example right there. Yeah. You got poodles and English cockers. He's been doing nothing his whole life except dogs.
Yeah. Nothing,
ever, every day. You know what it is like if you do this for a living. Every single day, you're dealing with dogs. Even on I don't take any days off, but 7 days a week, 24/7, we're out there, we're doing dogs.
Yeah, like someone
You know,
like Michael, I hate to say it, you should almost say, oh, here, Michael, here's your all breed license. I'm going to give you that until you screw up,
Yeah, if he screws up, fine, limit him. So, right. Yeah.
But I bet you could judge every group. I bet you do
He probably could. Yeah. Maybe not some of the new breeds that he's not familiar with.
Well, but, I'm not real with them either. So.
Oh, right. But you could give it a good go, right?
Yeah. And who's going to say you're wrong when you judge them, right? No one's seen them. So.
But I think that's why we keep seeing the same judges over and over and over again, because, and they're too old. I mean, they're not that they're too old, but they're very old. There's no new generation of judges that are coming through. They're with this education process they've got. It's good, but it's slowing the process down where they're going to run out of judges pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree.
It's inevitable, right?
Yeah,
it's like we said, you seem to see the same judges over and over and over again. Yeah. I mean, how many times can you show your specials dog to the same judge and get beat by the same dog, if they're in the same area?
Well, that's a good point, because we were talking about this before, Wayne and I, and he was on a panel, and he said he was one of the youngest guys in the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And that's scary in a way, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think somebody who's really old would probably say, experience is better than youth.
Yeah, youth thinks, yeah. But Harold Bell used to say, old age and treachery could overcome youth and skill.
Yeah, I think I see some of these older judges, they're very tired by the end of the third or fourth day if they've got so many groups and breeds and stuff like that. And I actually start to feel bad for them, It's got to be taxing on their mind, taxing on their physical capabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it's definitely tiring. It's like when we run around, we stop and we sit up and have lunch. They're on their feet a long time.
They're on their feet all day long.
Yeah.
I did a border terrier sweepstakes. There were like 150 dogs in the sweepstakes, which is a lot, more than I'd ever thought I would judge, right? But it took me all day long, and it was very hard. You're standing on your feet. You're looking at a dog, and I guess when we look outside the ring and we look at a judge judging the dog, we look at the 10 dogs in the ring and we pick the 2 that we like, and we're looking at them back and forth. And the whole time we're looking at them back and forth, this poor judge has got to judge the other 8 dogs.
Right.
And you're spending 16 or 20 minutes or whatever it is judging the other 8 dogs that, they probably don't like them either. And we're studying. So when you look at him and you think, well, why did he do that? I mean, obviously we've been looking at the dogs a lot longer than the judge has. You get right. 2 or 3 minutes to look at a dog, and, it's a skill you got to practice, I think. I give them a lot of credit. When I did that, it was like, when you've got all those dogs in the ring and you've got, the 2 you really like, you wish you could spend more time looking at them, and you don't have the time to do that, right?
I try to teach that in my class too. And it's all about timing, because this judge has 2 minutes to look at your dog, really. So, it's
and the novice exhibitor is worrying about the hindquarters when the judge is coming down and looking at their heads and expression. It doesn't matter what the hindquarters look like because he's not looking at the hindquarters, right?
That's right.
You can get it perfect. By the time you get it perfect, he's gone by your dog's head and he's been twisting his head looking that way.
All right, Jimmy, I got one more question for you then.
All right.
If you could meet up with a 20-year-old Jimmy Dickson, is there any advice you'd give him now?
Oh, let's see. If I could meet up with a 20-year-old. No, I happy with the choices that I made in my life. I mean, I've never had a top dog because I spent a lot of time close to home, took a lot of weekends off, and pretty much knew that there was a market for people that had nice dogs, but could never compete on that. Kate could, but she was never a pushy owner. Mrs. Irwin was never a pushy owner. So I could go and do it at my own schedule, my own pace. I would say that's probably more important to do it that way than it is I see a lot of these people that just really don't have any life at all. They're at dog show after dog show complaining to me all the time. Now I've got to go to this one. You don't have your life anymore sometimes.
There's a dog show almost every day if you want to go.
So-and-so, I'm showing this dog and they want me to go to, Iowa to a national specialty on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And then I got to fly back here and show my rest of the string of the dogs here. You know, I didn't allow that to happen.
That's one of the things I remember when I was talking to Mark Threlfall when he was showing Robert. He always insisted he never got on a plane. You know, Robert went to the dog shows he went to, and that was that. You know,
that was it, right? Yes, yep. And they went to a lot of dog shows.
Yeah, they did, but
fewer than they go to today, though.
Oh, and like I said, they can go to a dog show almost every day.
You could almost go every day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's why they don't have kennels at home, Will. Right? I mean, yep. I told you how in the beginning I worked in kennels. These people take everything that they have on the road with them. There's nobody home taking care and conditioning dogs at home.
It's a hard life, Jim. Oh.
I think it's a lot harder today than it used to be. I will say one of the advantages is that they pass the expenses along. You know? So, you know, it's not as hard, you know, like we used to share rooms and, you know, we ate a little bit cheaper than they do today. And, you know, because we were covering the expenses. Not we, Michael and Cliffy passed expenses along, but Michael didn't, you know. So, you know, he was trying to, you know, pinch pennies on gas and this and that. That's why we shared rides and did the caravans with Paul and all that.
Some great memories, though, for sure.
They were great memories, yeah.
Well, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. And
all right, Will.
I know we picked an odd time for you, but I'm glad. I thank you.
No, this time works out better for me. You know, with the kennel and the dogs and everything like that.
Okay.
It's better for me. I just, you know, Alice, my wife, she's a big garden club member and stuff like that. So she had the computer last night. I couldn't do it last night. She's she judges. Do you do flowers?
No.
You see, she does well. I go down to David's, and you know he's big with flowers and plants and stuff like that. And so he comes up. He was up here for the setter specialty. He stayed at the house.
Oh, did he? Okay.
On the way up, yeah. And you know they talk about gardening and all that. I just have to go in the other room, or I listen. You know,
fellow Canadian David. Oh wow.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. And
all right, Will.
Look forward to seeing you somewhere down the road.
We'll probably, sure, I'll see you at Westminster, right?
Yeah, at Westminster, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Will.
Thanks, Jim. It was great catching up to you. That was a great interview. I really look forward to seeing you sooner at a dog show. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. If you want to find out what's happening in Will's world, go to willalexander.net. If you want to get a hold of me, go to dogshowtips@gmail.com. And don't forget about the podcast every Thursday with Wayne Cavanaugh and myself, The Dog Show Drive. Until next time.